John Robison, pictured here, was born in 1739 in Scotland, and he died in 1805. He was a British physicist, mathematician, and professor of natural philosophy at the University of Edinburgh. He served as the first General Secretary to the Royal Society of Edinburgh. In 1797, he authored this book shown here called Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried on in the Secret Meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and Reading Societies. Robison traces the story of the 1776 founding of the Bavarian Illuminati by Adam Weishaupt, a professor at Ingolstadt, and the suppression of the order by the royal and church authorities of Bavaria in 1785. Although Robison was an advocate of science and rationalism, he eventually became an ardent monarchist later in life because of his disillusionment with the French Revolution. He saw the Bavarian Illuminati as responsible for the excesses of the French Revolution. He wrote the book to warn Britain and other kingdoms that the forces which toppled the French monarchy and started the terror there remained active. According to Robison, the Illuminists went underground all over Europe, infiltrated Freemasonry, and used existing Masonic lodges or set up their own as a cover for their activities. According to the George Washington Presidential Library, in 1798, a preacher named Reverend G. W. Snyder wrote to Washington about the subject and asked him for his thoughts on the matter. Snyder reported that he sent Washington a letter and enclosed a copy of Robison's book, Proof of a Conspiracy. Snyder stated that reading the book confirmed his opinion that groups called the Illuminati, German Union, Reading Societies, and in France by that of the Jacobin Club, were planning the overthrow of the U.S. government. He opined that many of the groups had French sympathies and warned Washington that the first step in the plot would be to destroy all religion. Snyder told Washington, "I hope and pray that God, who sent you as a deliverer of and father of this country, will keep you safe until this crisis passes." Washington replied to Snyder in a letter saying, "It was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and principles of Jacobinism had not spread to the United States. On the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. The idea that I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies, endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first, or pernicious principles of the latter, if they are susceptible of separation. That individuals of them may have done it, or that the founder or instrument employed to found the democratic societies in the United States may have had these objects and actually had a separation of the people from their government in view, is too evident to be questioned." Robison became interested in the study of how Freemasonry was hijacked and used for venting and propagating sentiments in religion and politics that could not have circulated in public without exposing the author to great danger. He writes that this impunity had gradually encouraged men of licentious principles to become more bold and to teach doctrines subversive of all our notions of morality, of all our confidence in the moral government of the universe, of all our hopes of improvement in a future state of existence, and of all satisfaction and contentment with our present life, so long as we live in a state of civil subordination. Robison thought that these groups only pretended to be interested in enlightening the world by the torch of philosophy, but that their real aim was to root out all the religious establishments and overturn all the existing governments of Europe. He claimed this association still existed and operated in secret, using the cover of Masonic lodges. He named the association the Order of Illuminati, founded in 1775 by Dr. Adam Weishaupt, and abolished in 1786 by the Elector of Bavaria, but revived immediately after under another name, and in a different form, all over Germany and spread from there into all the countries of Europe. Robison discusses the spread of Freemasonry throughout Europe, as well as the schisms that took place among the organization. He notes that in 1743, Baron Hund traveled to Paris and learned some wonderful secrets circulating among the French lodges. Robison describes the most significant of these secrets as follows. When the order of Knights Templars was abolished by Philip the Fair and cruelly persecuted, some worthy persons escaped and took refuge in the highlands of Scotland, where they concealed themselves in caves. These persons possessed the true secrets of Masonry, which had always been in that order, having been acquired by the knights during their services in the East, from the pilgrims whom they occasionally protected or delivered. The Chevalier Rose-Croix continued to have the same duties as formerly, though robbed of their emoluments. In fine, every true Mason is a Knight Templar. Hund returned to Germany and propagated this system of Masonry. In Germany, Robison reports, as this doctrine spread, the country descended into a state of atheism, from decency to dissoluteness, and from loyalty to rebellion, due to the influence of Masonic lodges. The goal, as he saw it, was to make men discontented with their condition of civil subordination and the restraints of revealed religion. The lodges gathered together many young men in hidden assemblies who were eager to express sentiments they would not dare reveal in public. Robison writes of the allure of these secret meetings, which preached fraternal equality. It was Baron von Nigg who formed a scheme for uniting the whole fraternity. The purpose of doing so was to promote his utopian plan of creating a society entrenched in universal benevolence. Supposedly, this society would exist in a state of liberty and equality. Von Nigg and the Marquis of Constanza colluded to choose from the best elements they obtained via their communications with other systems of Masonry, and they formed the eclectic or syncretic Masonry of the United Lodges of Germany in 1776. In Munich in Bavaria in 1775 existed a lodge theater of good counsel, of which Dr. Adam Weishaupt, professor of canon law in the University of Ingolstadt, was a member. Robison notes that Weishaupt was educated by the Jesuits, but upon the abolition of the order became one of their most bitter enemies. Robison writes that Bavaria is a Roman Catholic state, and in his words is far advanced in the habits of gross superstition. He says that young people in such an environment will be lured in by the idea of casting off the restraints of religion, and that Weishaupt sought to emancipate these young people from the terrors of superstition. This would also serve Weishaupt's agenda of triumphing over the Jesuits, with whom he had long struggled for the direction of Ingolstadt University. Robison writes that in 1777, Weishaupt schemed to create an establishment which in time would govern the world. In other words, the New World Order was the brainchild of Weishaupt. Lodge Theodore collaborated with other associated lodges to create another order of Masons who called themselves the Illuminated. Their express aim was to abolish Christianity and overturn all civil government. In 1783, several members of the group, which Robison calls the Order of the Illuminati, were brought before the Court of Enquiry and questioned. What they revealed was published and cast a very dark shadow upon the order, which was said to renounce Christianity, practice sensual pleasure, and declare that patriotism and loyalty were narrow-minded prejudices incompatible with universal benevolence. Accumulating property was seen as an obstacle to the happiness of any nation whose laws were framed for its protection and increase. These members claimed that the end justifies the means was the motto of the order, and that all were encouraged to spy on each other and report to their superiors. These claims were denied by the Illuminati, but nevertheless the elector issued an edict expressly abolishing the Order of the Illuminati. This was followed by a search after their papers, and this included Lodge Theodore. No papers were to be found, and the explanation given was that they had burned them all since the order was dissolved. Robison claims this order to dissolve the organization was ignored by Lodge Theodore. Meanwhile, he reports that Weishaupt was banished from Bavaria and fled from his professor's chair. Subsequently, he traveled to Saxe-Gotha, where he received protection under the Duke of Saxe-Gotha. Weishaupt then published an account of the order, which was given to every novice member in a discourse read at his reception. Oddly, however, this publication differed exceedingly from the accounts that had been given by the 4 professors that had testified before the court of inquiry. It made no mention of the higher degrees of the order, which the professors had mostly blamed for the iniquities of the organization. Robison describes in detail what he says is the real constitution, which was put forth by Weishaupt. In it, he quotes Weishaupt as stating that this is the great object held out by this association, and the means of attaining it is illumination, enlightening the understanding by the sun of reason, which will dispel the clouds of superstition and of prejudice. The proficients in this order are therefore justly named the illuminated. And of all illumination which human reason can give, none is comparable to the discovery of what we are, our nature, our obligations, what happiness we are capable of, and what are the means of attaining it. Weishaupt explained that the lowest member of the order, the Minerval, must consider himself as an instrument in the hands of his superiors to be used for the noblest purposes. The Minerval was expected to state, I pledge myself to account the good of the order as my own, and am ready to serve it with my fortune, my honor, and my blood. Should I, through omission, neglect, passion, or wickedness, behave contrary to the good of the order, I subject myself to what reproof or punishment my superiors shall enjoin. A drawn sword was pointed at the breast of the Minerval, and he was asked if he would be obedient to the commands of his superiors. He was threatened with unavoidable vengeance if he should ever betray the order. Robison notes, however, that only a very small amount of knowledge about the real aims of the order was revealed to the Illuminatus minor, who was a step up in the hierarchy from the Minerval. His superiors tried to convince him that it is possible to unite all the inhabitants of the earth into one great society that basks in universal happiness. This is to be accomplished, however, only after the abolition of national distinctions and patriotism. Princes are unnecessary, and the authority of the ruling powers is of inferior moral weight to that of the order. Quoting Weishaupt, if any person is more disposed to listen to princes than to the order, he is not fit for it, and must rise no higher. We must do our utmost to procure the advancement of Illuminati into all important civil offices. Thus, the Illuminati sought to infiltrate existing governments and do their workings to bring down the system from within. Though the suppression of the order by the elector continued, discoveries were made which shed great light on the workings of the Illuminati order. A collection of original papers and correspondence was found by searching the house of Zwack, one of the significant members of the order, in 1786. The following year, a much larger collection was found at another location. Also, Baron von Nigg, the most active member next to Weishaupt, published an account of some of the higher degrees of the order. These works give an account of the whole secret constitution of the order, its various degrees, manner of conferring them, instructions to members, a history of the order, and an explanation of the connection of the order with Freemasonry. In his book, Robison publishes some extracts from these important accounts. The members of the order took antique names. Weishaupt was known as Spartacus, Zwack as Cato, Nigg as Philo, Bassus as Hannibal, Hertel as Marius, Constanza as Diomedes, and Nicolai as Lucian. They also gave ancient names to cities and countries of Europe. So, for example, Munich was Athens and Vienna was Rome. On February 6, 1778, Spartacus wrote to Cato and outlined the process for weeding out the worthy from the unworthy among the membership. He said that within the order, every person shall be made a spy on another and on all around him. Nothing can escape our sight. By these means we shall readily discover who are contented and receive with relish the peculiar state doctrines and religious opinions that are laid before them. And, at last, the trustworthy alone will be admitted to a participation of the whole maxims and political constitution of the order. In a council composed of such members, we shall labor at the contrivance of means to drive by degrees the enemies of reason and humanity out of the world, and to establish a peculiar morality and religion fitted for the great society of mankind. Among the papers of the Illuminati and in the handwriting of Zwack, the following projects were outlined. Description of a strong box, which, if forced open, shall blow up and destroy its contents. Several receipts for procuring abortion. A composition which blinds or kills when spurted in the face. A sheet containing a receipt for sympathetic ink. Tea for procuring abortion. A method for filling a bedchamber with pestilential vapors. How to take off impressions of seals so as to use them afterwards as seals, a collection of some hundreds of such impressions with a list of their owners, principals, nobles, clergymen, and merchants, a manuscript entitled Better Than Horace, which was afterwards printed and distributed and was an attack and bitter satire on all religion, and a dissertation of suicide. The defense given by Weishaupt upon publication of these writings was that these things were not carried into effect, only spoken of, and are justifiable when taken in proper connection. Spartacus also wrote the following to Cato: By this plan we shall direct all mankind. In this manner, and by the simplest means, we shall set in motion and in flames. The occupations must be so allotted and contrived that we may in secret influence all political transactions. In another letter to Cato, Weishaupt speaks about a peculiar morality and a popular religion that the order would one day give the world. He said, "There must not a single purpose ever come in sight that is ambiguous, and that may betray our aims against religion and the state. One must speak sometimes one way, and sometimes another, but so as never to contradict ourselves, and so that, with respect to our true way of thinking, we may be impenetrable." Robison also publishes information on how the holy secret chapter of Scotch Knights is assembled, instructions for the lower classes of Masonry, as well as instructions relating to Masonic lodges in general, and details about the ritual of reception and the oath taken by members of the order. He reports that it's said that the chief study of the Scotch Knight is to work on all men in such a way as is most insinuating. He must endeavor to acquire the possession of considerable property, and try to secretly get the upper hand in all Mason lodges, as well as to get control over the money of the lodges, or at least take care that it be applied to purposes favorable to the order. But all this must be carried out in secret, so as not to draw attention to it. Above all, to push forward the plan of eclectic Masonry. Some of the specifics mentioned in these instructions noted by Robison include the following. The power of the order was extended to the putting of an individual to death, and the reason given was that this power was allowed to all sovereignties for the good of the state, and therefore belonged to the order, which was to govern the world. We must acquire the direction of education, of church, management, of the professional chair, and of the pulpit. We must bring our opinions into fashion by every art, spread them among the people by the help of young writers. We must preach the warmest concern for humanity and make people indifferent to all other relations. We must take care that our writers be well puffed and that the reviewers do not depreciate them. Therefore, we must endeavor by every means to gain over the reviewers and journalists, and we must also try to gain the booksellers, who in time will see that it is in their interest to side with us. Here's another quote. "We must win the common people in every corner. This will be obtained chiefly by means of the schools, and by open, hearty behavior, show, condescension, popularity, and toleration of their prejudices, which we shall at leisure root out and dispel. If a writer publishes anything that attracts notice and is in itself just, but does not accord with our plan, we must endeavor to win him over, or decry him." Robison notes that women would also be useful to the order. In the writings of the order is found the following statement: "There's no way of influencing men so powerfully as by means of the women. These should therefore be our chief study. We should insinuate ourselves into their good opinion, give them hints of emancipation from the tyranny of public opinion, and of standing up for themselves. It will be an immense relief to their enslaved minds to be freed from any one bond of restraint, and it will fire them the more and cause them to work for us with zeal, without knowing that they do so. For they will only be indulging their own desire of personal admiration." Perhaps the most striking quote from this section of Robison's book concerns his insistence on secrecy in all matters. He says, "The great strength of our order lies in its concealment. Let it never appear in any place in its own name, but always covered by another name and another occupation. None is fitter than the 3 lower degrees of Freemasonry. The public is accustomed to it, expects little from it, and therefore takes little notice of it. Next to this, the form of a learned or literary society is best suited to our purpose, and had Freemasonry not existed, this cover would have been employed, and it may be much more than a cover. It may be a powerful engine in our hands." By establishing reading societies and subscription libraries and taking these under our direction and supplying them through our labors, we may turn the public mind which way we will. In like manner, we must try to obtain an influence in the military academies. This may be of mighty consequence. The printing houses, bookseller shops, chapters, and in short, in all offices which have any effect, either in forming or managing or even directing the mind of man. In sum, Weishaupt is proposing the gradual infiltration of all facets of society with the Illuminati doctrine. The order is connected everywhere. Robison acknowledges that the private correspondence that has been published and that he used as source material was by no means the whole of what was discovered at Land's Hut and Basse's Hof. However, the government kept much useful information concealed out of regard to the families of the persons concerned, but also so that the true extent of what was uncovered would not become commonly known. Robison notes that enough was discovered to give the public a very just idea of the designs of the society and of its connections. In part 2, I will report on Robison's reflections and reactions to what he found. See you next time.